I'm curious. So you believe like God's a loving God who loves everyone?
Absolutely.
Okay, for sure.
Amen.
I'm curious. So like the people that like were, and you believe that like the only way to get in heaven is believing that He died on the cross and resurrected.
Yeah, that's the gospel. Amen.
Yes. So like the people that like are from like India, like Asia, that like grew up in these cultures that like are Hindu and Buddhist and never got the chance to accept Him, to hear Him. Now, however, there might have been a missionary in their life come and be like, oh, this is the gospel. But why are they gonna convert their religion that they've been practicing for traditions? And it's like these billions of people are going to hell, and like we're you can say predestined to hell, and like they never, like what I mean, like, and how I feel like that's not loving to like they don't give them the opportunity. Like I say Asia, but there's people in America too, like that you understand. Like,
Okay, so is that your question?
Yeah, that's my question. Like,
okay,
why is that fair?
So as a Christian on this campus, how are you normally handling that when you were asked that?
Personally, I don't know the answer because like it doesn't. I've never been asked that. I've only asked that to like my youth pastor and like leaders. Because like that's the only thing I'm saying.
Because I believe that a lot of Christians that don't get answers like these, or which are critical questions, they end up doubting or end up turning from the faith. And I definitely don't want to see you do that. So I'll give you my best answer, and it's out of the Bible. It's Romans 4:15 and Romans 5:13. Romans 5:13 actually, let me see if I can call it up on my phone here. Maybe it might be easier. That way, if you can see it, it might be better.
I'll write them down. You said Romans what?
Romans 5:15, or Romans 5:13, and Romans 4:15.
Okay.
And then I can also give you a John 3, 16, 17, 18, 19 argument too.
Okay.
It's really good. Let me just get the verses here. So we'll start with Romans 5:13. So I'll go back one. Wherefore, as by one man sin entered into the world, and death by sin, so death passed upon all men, for that all have sinned. So that one man is Adam. I'm probably preaching to the choir here.
Yes,
so Adam had caused death and sin, so the consequences of sin is death, and he brought that into the world, and now all of us are condemned with that curse. Right. So that's why the graveyards are full and so forth. But then the next verse, for until the law, so what is the law? Well, there's two laws. There's the Mosaic law in the Old Testament given to the Jews, right? 10 commandments versus the 613 laws of the mitzvah and all that were given in the Old Testament, in the Old Testament Torah. But then in the New Testament, Romans 2, the Gentiles, which have not the law, do by nature the things contained in the law. So we have a law written in our hearts. Okay, that's Romans 2. So I believe that this law right here is dealing with all law, the law of morality for a human being. For until the law, sin was in the world, but sin is not, see that word imputed? Imputed when there is no law.
I'm sorry.
So imputation. So think about when you think of the imputation that Jesus does for us, when we're saved, He imputes righteousness to us. That means that doesn't mean we're righteous. I'm walking around sinless, but that I still sin, but my soul is righteous. He imputes righteousness on my soul. When I die, I'm accepted in the beloved. So that's kind of the imputation. So God looks on me and He sees your soul is accounted righteous. That's imputation. So God says, well, for somebody that doesn't have law, sin is not imputed when there is no law. That means if somebody doesn't know the law, how can God impute sin to them if they don't even know it? So this would apply to people that are like babies, people that have mental disorders, people that got in accidents or vegetables, or people that are born with partial brains, people that can't reason correctly. Okay. That would deal with those people. And then Romans 4:15, here's the Romans 4:15 passage. For if they which are of the law be heirs, faith is made void and the promise made of none effect. That's dealing with Abraham and the law, because the law worketh wrath. For where no law is, there is no transgression. Okay. So if I don't have law, how can I transgress a law that I don't even know I have? Right. So now watch this. I say that to cover the babies and all that, because you're going to get asked that. Yeah. You cover all of that, retarded people. I don't say that disrespectfully. There's people that just don't. And then John 3, I want you to see that this will cover all those religions and stuff right here. Hold on. John 3. Now you know John 3:16. Yes. But we'll go to 19. Yeah. And so 18, and then so 19 says this. This is, people read John 3:16, but they forget 18 and 19. It covers a whole lot more truth dealing with your question. And this is the condemnation. So he says, first, he talks about the condemnation. He that believeth on Him is not condemned, but he that believeth not is condemned already.
Can you rephrase that? That's a little confusing. I'm sorry.
So he that believeth on him, that's Jesus Christ, right, is not condemned. So if I believe on Jesus right now, after he died on the cross, rose again, if I believe on him, I'm not condemned.
Yeah.
But if I don't believe on him, I'm condemned.
Right.
Now, let's read into that more of what it actually says.
Sorry, what's condemn mean again?
Condemn means you're probably headed for hell.
Okay, that's right.
So,
Sorry, I should know that.
So he that believeth on him is not condemned, but he that believeth not is condemned already. So what do you got to do to be condemned already according to that verse?
Just believe in him.
Well, to not believe on him, you'd be condemned already. But for you to not believe on him would mean somebody told you about him.
Right, okay.
There's knowledge of the gospel there.
I see.
So if I don't believe on what I heard, I'm condemned already.
Okay.
So you see how that works? So God is not judging people that haven't heard the gospel and saying you're condemned already.
Right.
He's saying if you've heard it and then you reject it,
Then,
you're condemned already.
Okay, that's
so
fair.
then it says, and this is the condemnation, that light is come into the world, and men love darkness rather than light because their deeds were evil. So this is how we apply those that are like Hindus and all these other religions. Well, if they're responding to light, and God says in Romans 1 that all people have the ability to respond to the correct light, his light, not the light of the Hindu god Vishnu or Allah, Allah and all that. But God says, above Allah, you know who I am, but will you respond to me? Above Vishnu, you know who I am, will you respond to me? And if they do respond to him, which some do, God says that everyone that doeth evil hateth the light, neither cometh to the light, lest his deeds should be reproved. So they're not going to come to that because God inherently placed that. It's kind of built within you, like knowing how to breathe when you come out of the womb.
Yeah, right.
It's kind of stuff like that. Like nobody has to teach you the laws of logic they just teach you the alphabet. You start knowing the difference between things, right? So, but he that doeth truth cometh to the light, that his deeds may be made manifest, that they are wrought in God. So here's how it works. If somebody from another religion all over the world, in the deep, dark jungles of Brazil, and they're just responding to God correctly, God's not going to send them to hell. He's saying, if they're coming to me by faith, and I'll show you this verse, in Ephesians 2:8, this is how they'll be coming to God. Ephesians, let me find it, Ephesians 2:8. 2 verse 8. So here it is. For by grace are you saved through faith. It didn't say faith in Jesus. It says, for by grace are you saved through faith. Now the whole context in there, it's going to have a whole lot of context about Jesus in there. Right. But there is a truth in the Bible, as a systematically throughout the whole Bible, that Old Testament Jews were having to come to God by faith. If you read the whole book of Hebrews 11, or the whole chapter of Hebrews 11, it's all about faith. It's not about faith in Jesus. It's just about, because it starts with Abel. Abel didn't have faith in Jesus. Jesus didn't even come yet. So all those came by faith. So I believe this is a truth throughout the whole Bible. For by grace are you saved through faith, and that not of yourselves. It's a gift of God, not of works, lest any man should boast. So I believe whether it's Old Testament or New Testament, if you come to God, having never heard of Jesus, whether you're Old or New Testament, you never heard of Jesus, but you come to God by faith, by what God has revealed within you innately, that God will not send you to hell because you're responding to God by faith. So, and here's another aspect of that. If you remember Cornelius in the Bible, one of the first Gentiles to get saved in Acts chapter 10. He was praying to God. He was a lost man, a Gentile. He wasn't even a Jew, a lost man. He's praying to God, and God looked at his prayer and said, man, these prayers are memorial. I take these prayers as a memorial unto me. Hey, I'm going to go tell the Jew Peter to go over here and tell you about Jesus. Yeah, okay. And so I believe that there are cases where if somebody hasn't heard about, like in the deep dark jungles of Brazil, that God will send. That's why we send missionaries all over the world. That God will respond to those pleas of those hearts of those individuals that are seeking truth. And I'm not saying in every case that would be the case, but I'm saying that is a principle in the Bible that it does teach that. Like the Philippian jailer or the Ethiopian eunuch, he was on that chariot, he was reading the book of Isaiah. All of a sudden, God sends Philip there. Now, Ethiopian eunuch, he's a Gentile. Ethiopian eunuch, Philip shows up as a Jew, saved Jew, and he tells him the book of Isaiah and explains it to him and preaches Jesus right out of that, and then he gets saved. Yeah. Now, here he's responding by just reading a book, He's saying, I don't understand what I'm reading.
Yeah, no,
And then here comes God sending him that. So I believe there is some kind of miraculous thing where God, if he sees somebody really seeking truth, that he'll send people there. But I believe there's also a truth that if they never get the option of hearing the gospel, then they won't die and go to hell if they're responding somehow by grace through faith in what God has revealed to them.
Yeah, that's a fair
So
answer. I would say like that's a very good answer. My only like thing about it is like, so it's like I always say the Hindus, like they've been generations on generations, like their ancestors were Hindu, their grandparents, whatever, and then some white man comes in and is like, look, this is the right religion, and then they just completely switch.
it's hard for people. It is. But what God is appealing to in the Bible, I believe, with Jesus saying, go into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature. When he said that, Mark 16:15, when he said that, I believe he knew there was, and there were established religions all over the world. And he knew that we were going to bump into those hurdles and we were going to have to end up dealing with them. And if you look at Paul on Mars Hill in Acts 17, he was dealing with these Athenians, these Stoics and Epicureans, and they were strong in their Gnosticism and all that. And he still preached the gospel and the death, burial, resurrection of Jesus to them. And they heard him out. And it didn't say they all believed. It said a few of them believed, and others wanted him to return, and they wanted to hear more of it. But then it also says there's a lot of them that didn't believe. So I do this when I'm out here, and I suggest any Christian do the same thing and take that advice. Wherever you go, you can't force people to believe. You just got to preach the gospel in love, have a good spirit, and you pray to God before you come out and do anything, and you just reach people that are seeking truth. And if they're willing to come up to you and talk to you, I say reach those people. If somebody's giving me the middle finger out here, I'm like, hey, I hope you change your mind one day. But I'm not here to badger or beat up people spiritually. I mean, I was lost. I was in these people's shoes. So I had to start from somewhere myself. And I wouldn't have appreciated if somebody talked to me that way. So I try to be more sympathetic and empathetic towards people when I'm dealing with them. But I know there's preachers that come out here and they just rail on the people, and it's so foul, it's so bad.
Christians like that. I would say, I appreciate your answer. Is there any like passage you would recommend me read and like study on to just gain a little bit of knowledge?
Hebrews 11 is so great for Old Testament salvation, and when I say Old Testament, it's such a broad thing. I believe Hebrews 11 can cover Old Testament salvation and New Testament salvation apart from Christ.
Okay.
Because what do you
mean by that, apart from Christ? Like that?
Because Hebrews 11, the very first verse defines faith. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. And then he goes right on to, this is how the elders obtain a good report. And the elders being not even Old Testament Jews, because Abel wasn't a Jew, he was a Gentile. Yeah. And then Noah wasn't a Jew, he was a Gentile. So when you finally get to where Jews got established, you go to Abraham, which Abraham wasn't even a Jew. He was from Ur of the Chaldees, a Gentile nation. Yeah. When you look at Hebrews 11 and you start reading down, you're like, man, none of these guys are Christians. Yeah, but they're and it says in Hebrews 11:6 to kind of define the context. Faith, it says, but without faith, it is impossible to please him. And you got to read carefully that. It doesn't say, but without faith in Christ. It's just, but without faith, it is impossible to please him. For he that cometh to God must believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of them that diligently seek him. So I believe that any Old Testament Jew, any Old Testament Gentile, it's any human being, if they would seek God by faith, that God would receive them.
Sweet. I appreciate it, man. Thank you very much.
Yeah, very good question, though.
Yes, sir.
Edward, what's your name?
I'm Nate.
Nate.
Next time I see you, I'll say hey.
Hey, I'll pray for you. We come out here two times a month, try to witness to the people out here. But nice to meet you, Nate.
Yes, sir.
You take care.